welcome to another hobby. I'm Austin, and today's hobby is continuing this character concept design from last week. So, this is as far as we got last time. Ended up working through a couple iterations of this character. This one on the left is the last one I came up with, and probably the closest to what I'm going for in the end. And so today we're gonna go through all of the comments and feedback I got on last week's video and implement them. Yeah, okay. So I'll just continue off this one, I guess. So what I'm gonna do first, make a copy of this one, and now that I've had a bit of time away from it, I'm going to edit some things that I think could be a little bit different, and then we'll go from there. So first, I want this to be a little bit less baggy and unkempt feeling. I think I'm gonna lean a little bit more into the kind of militaristic formality of this fashion design. I think what I'm probably going to do for the story to make it so that this character can still fairly easily blend in lots of different places is make it so that this style, whatever country it originated from, whatever culture it's from, it's going to end up something sort of ubiquitous throughout multiple countries on the continent and maybe other continents, almost like something like a suit ends up sort of common in most Western countries and even spreads from there, so that if people see it in one country, they won't necessarily associate it with another country and another nationality. They'll just assume that it's a style choice, rather than being like a representation of nationality. And thinking about it more since, I think the way it's going to work is underneath there's going to be a fairly straightforward long jacket, and the way the style is going to work is just like in real life. There's always variations on the style, so some might have tails like a tux does, some might not, some might be shorter coats, some might be longer, etc. But the idea is the coat underneath with sleeves and buttons that go up the sides. And then there's a separate piece that goes over top that is that front piece with button holes that attaches to the front of the coat, a sort of belt that goes around fairly high up on the waist, kind of around belly button level or higher, and around the mid back with some kind of buckle. And attached to that ring is this loose shirt with large openings on the sides for the sleeves and a turtleneck kind of high collar on the top, and then an opening along the back that goes all the way up that is maybe buttoned together or laced, some sort of clasp. And I might have variations on this as well. There might be ones like the ones that open in the back, like I explained here, might be more for nobility or people that could afford to have some kind of servant that helps them dress, because you can't really button it up easily on your own back. But there might be ones that, rather than buckling in the back and having some kind of lace along the back, they just attach perhaps on the side here and have an attach to the bottom of the sleeve, maybe even just like not a full slit all the way up to the edge of the sleeve, but just a small cut so that it can open like that. That's the ends of the belt here, so there'd be like the belt clasps that go together here, and maybe like two buttons that hold this part together in the sleeve hole up here, and then maybe something on the neck to clasp that together after you put it on, so that you can put it on just by yourself. So that's kind of what I'm thinking for this overall look. Pants, just to keep it simple for character design and for my own drawing purposes, because legs are not important, not as important most of the time in character design or in just most drawings. The pants will just be basically regular suit pants, formal pants. And other than that, I guess usually just boots, maybe gloves sometimes, I don't know, hats, all that stuff, accessory stuff can come and go as character design dictates. Even though I didn't get any feedback on this, I've had time to think about it more, and I do think I probably want this design to fit a little bit better with my original, in that I think I want him to be a little bit more of an imposing figure. But before I get into doing a finalization of the new body shape, I want to do some concept work on the face. I'm going to try and get something a little bit more final and something that hopefully is fairly reproducible. Try to give myself some rules to follow when drawing the head so that it feels like the same person when I'm drawing it multiple times, because that is one thing I struggle with quite a bit, is keeping multiple drawings of the same character looking like the same character, because I most often don't draw the same thing very much. So I actually think I like this sketchier version of the head a little bit more, so I'll put that to the side as reference too. And I actually found another concept since last time from around the same time, 2012-ish, that might be able to use for this. Probably not super useful, but best to just have all of them here as reference if needed. Looks a little bit more old and wizened than the other designs, and I might lean a little bit into that, but I do think I still want to keep him generally middle-aged, starting to get a bit older. So looking at this, the second one, this sketchy one, it has some elements that would make it more easy to reproduce, and that's this sharp jawline that goes from like the cheekbones to the chin, and then the jaw sticking out like a triangle. If I can like replicate that shape when drawing this character, I think it'll make them easier to keep consistent. So I'll probably use that as kind of a base for this. Always nice to start with a circle with a midpoint line, another 2/3 of the circle's height for the chin, approximately 2/3, right? Yeah. And to keep this simple, we'll do the width of the chin down here, and then just connect these lines up to the circle. And for the side view and totally front-on view, I'll need to make slightly modified rules. But for this sort of 3/4 view, that is kind of the more often used one, I'm using it to kind of figure out the rules I want to use. And then we'll just, add in the sort of triangle for the jaw on each side. We'll do the line straight across where the chin to cheekbone line meets the sphere. Then that'll be the eyes and ear line. We'll put the nose approximately halfway from that eye line and the chin. Mouth about halfway between that, maybe a little bit higher up. If we were to do side view, I think the easiest would be to just go straight down off the front. Well, not straight down, a bit of an angle off the front. Smaller section for the chin, then this line going up maybe to like the midpoint of the circle. Triangle for the jaw. Now this is too squashed, I think, so having that line go maybe to like the 2/3 point, and then the jaw and the ear is probably pretty good. And what about a front view? Can probably still do these lines going basically to the sphere, maybe a bit lower. So I think this will give me something I can fairly easily replicate. So what I'm going to do is get rid of everything except for just the base construction lines that I put down. And I'm just going to use that, keep it on a separate layer, use it as a base to do some design ideas with. So first I'll try doing one that's closer to what I had in the original. Fairly thick neck, probably. It's maybe too thick. Don't want him to look like a bodybuilder, but I do want him to look athletic and imposing. Nordic, maybe, is a good way to put it. So from the side, that nose, I think it's probably fairly flat still and fairly straight. Head-on one, fairly similar to how I'll be drawing the 3/4 view, just everything's slightly shifted and more symmetric. Okay, so I am liking this design a fair bit, and it's likely I will continue with it in the final, but I do want to try some other things. So let's try one that is a little bit older. Now this nose shape I'm drawing here, especially the bridge of the nose, I kind of end up defaulting to that in a lot of my character designs, so I try to steer away from it a little if I can when designing new characters, just so they don't all end up looking the same, but we'll see how it looks with this character. I think I'm getting a little bit too old with this character, so I'm going to get rid of just a few of these lines. Make them look a little less 60s, a little more 40s to 50s. Okay, so I'm not going to bother drawing the side and front views for all these, just because still concepting stages and there's no point if it's not something I'm feeling already. But I do think this older style adds something to the character that I like, but feels a little bit too snake-like villain, I guess, where I still want the character to feel charismatic. So I think what I'm going to do is try and do a combination of the two of these. So I'm going to take this first one I did, use it as the base, and I'm going to take some of the elements I like from this one. Mostly I think it's the face. I'm going to see what it looks like if I take the nose, and yeah, we'll try just the nose for now. And then we'll sketch in some of the other elements that make him like a little bit older. Yeah, I think I like that synthesis of the two. So let's see if I can kind of carry these changes onto this side and front view. Yeah, okay. I think that process worked well. Got me somewhere I'm pretty happy with. Still fairly sketchy and will need a little bit more refining for the final. But using this as a way to kind of construct the head and get it to be consistent, I think is going to work fairly well for keeping this character recognizable each time I draw them. So now that I've done that, what I'm going to do is take the one that I decided I like the most and put it on its own layer so that I can use it as reference without it cluttering things. And now I'm going to try and do a quote-unquote final version, final design. So instead of starting completely from scratch with the body, what I'm going to do is copy this and kind of buff it up a little bit to make it that thicker version that I wanted. Now for that head, let's see if we can use that strategy I just came up with for keeping it consistent. So put that circle at the bottom of the chin, this going up to the edge of the circle on each side. Okay, something like that, I think. Let's use this layer where this clothing is, and we'll put that in. I still like the idea of the sleeves being kind of like really long French cuffs. I think it's French cuffs that do that, where they're like two pieces that fold next to each other, rather than a regular cuff where it's sort of that shape. French cuffs are more like this shape, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's what a French cuff is. Okay, so still a couple things design-wise that I'm not 100% sure of. One is he's always had this cane, because he's always been sort of a wealthy person. But I don't know if I want that, because now that he's got even more kind of noble clothing than he had in this original design, it makes it feel more like he's straight up nobility rather than somebody that just has, I guess, quirkiness of style, where even though he's sort of dressed down in just like a long coat and a baggy shirt, he still has a cane. But when it's sort of a noble garb and a cane, it feels extra formal, and I think maybe that doesn't necessarily work anymore with this design, especially since he needs to be able to blend into places and nobility doesn't really blend in. So I'm going to get rid of the cane, I think, for this design. Just have him making a fist or whatever. And I think another thing that will help is when I'm coloring this kind of garb, if it's considered similar to like a suit is in Western culture, it would often be black or dark blue. But I think if I make it maybe a similar tan to this original drawing, or like a lighter gray, it'll feel less fancy and noble and feel more like somebody, I guess, middle class was able to get a suit that is kind of nice, but not necessarily nobility nice. I think it's time to do not going to do a super clean final one like I have here for a couple reasons. One, things might change in the future with this character design. Two, because this is concept and reference for me to use to put the character into the comic, there's not much point in me putting a ton of work into finalizing it, as long as there's enough there for me to work off of as reference. And three, I actually find this really clean style kind of takes some away from the emotion of the piece, I guess you could say. Makes it feel a little bit too stiff and digital. So if I have something a little bit more rough and sketchy, it preserves some of what the feeling I want to be there, which is an important part of the concept that I want to use as reference for putting in the comic, even if the images in the comic might be more refined. So I'm actually going to do just a little bit more sketch lines on the face itself, since I only really roughed in the really basic construction lines, but I want to have a bit more to work with for putting in the final line work. I just noticed one kind of inconsistency here. This side view, this nose point, has kind of half of the height of the nose for it, but on these side views, it's a lot less. Like if you think of this bump here representing this, the ratios are way off. So this should be more like this and this, if that makes sense. And just because this pose doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense for his character being more eloquent and charismatic, I'm going to redo this handshake. Now, as far as how crisp and refined the final art in the comic itself is going to be, still not 100% decided on that. I'm thinking I might make it fairly sketchy, just so that the actual workload of the comic itself isn't super onerous, since it'll most likely just be me working on it. So whatever I do here for this character might actually be as refined and detailed as I get for the final comic itself. I do think for this character, he probably would be the kind to want to be fully self-sufficient and wouldn't have the jacket that clasps in the back that requires help to button up. So I think he'd probably have this attach on the side where he can reach it himself. I'm not too worried about making these shoes look really good. Most of the time they won't be in frame. If they are, they'll probably end up being fairly small, like a small percentage of the comic panel, in which case they'll probably just be drawn like really quick kind of thing. So if for some reason I ever need to draw a foot close up for a dramatic panel, maybe there's somebody laying on the ground like, no, spare me, in the foreground is like a foot. In that case, then I'll start to consider if I want to put some effort into designing what this boot looks like. Okay, now I'm gonna completely hide all those construction lines and do just a really rough coloring job on this. I think that pretty much covers it. I think I generally like where I got to in the end with this. It ended up coming back around fairly close to where this original one was. You know, I actually might keep this 5 o'clock shadow thing going on, just to make it, again, feel slightly less like he's a noble person. Yeah, so in the end, you could tell that these are coming from the same sort of starting place, capturing most of the same elements, stuff that I found important for this character, but I think this new design really helps it feel more unique, like it's actually from a fantastical world, rather than just a guy from maybe like a Western or Victorian era, and it's more realistic proportions. Overall, it's just, I think, an improved design, and I hope you think so too. I'm going to try one thing real quick. I'm just going to try going over the jacket to darken it a bit and see if I like that better. Cool. Yeah, I like it. I'm going to call that finished for now, and we'll see if there's any changes in the final product once it starts being put into the comic, if I ever get around to actually making the comic. I mean, if not, I enjoy this kind of work, just the design work and planning stages, so if this is all I ever end up doing, I still think it was valuable. Anyway, let me know what you think of this. If you have any tips or suggestions for me on how to improve anything that I'm working on here, I'd be glad to hear it, and let me know if anything I'm sharing with you is helpful for your process in any way. And thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if that's the kind of thing you want to do, and have a good one.